it's Kate Brownfield from ADHDkidscanthrive.com. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, please like, comment, and share, as it'll help others find the ADHD Kids Can Thrive podcast. Today, my guest is Jamie Nunez, Western Regional Manager of CommonSense.org. CommonSense.org is a free resource to help discover media you feel good about sharing with your kids and students, as well as help them to thrive in a digital world. Please enjoy our conversation. Hi, Jamie. Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to speaking to you today.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
I'm good.
Happy Friday to you. Love
Yeah.
your jovial spirit. And it already sounds like we're going to have a very engaging time online. So
we're going to have a great time. Okay, so let's start from the top. What is Common Sense Media and what is its mission?
All right. Well, thank you for that. So let me just paint a picture, right? We know first that most technology wasn't really built with kids in mind, right? So Common Sense, its central mission is really to change that. And that we believe that media should actually inspire and entertain families. And we also feel like that technology should protect the privacy of not only kids, but families in need. So what we do is a number of things. On our Common Sense Media platform, we rate and review books, videos, apps, to ensure that they're developmentally appropriate for kids. For educators, we have Common Sense Education, where we provide a free curriculum and classroom resources around what we deem as digital citizenship or literacy skills. And on the advocacy side, we explore advocacy efforts around digital equity or tech accountability, student data privacy, so on and so forth. So
that's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do a lot. And I actually found, which is why I wanted to talk to you today, as raising my own children who are now young adults, I actually found Common Sense Media to be a great partner in my parenting. It made it really easy to figure out what they should be watching and not watching, or just kind of give some quick guidance on that. And then also like different tools to use to help with supplement their learning. And I feel like our kids are moving faster than we are as parents, just because of the way they're designed and built and the generation they're being raised in. So Common Sense, you guys have some amazing tools to kind of help parents stay on top of their kids, because they know more than we do at this point. Okay, so Jamie, can you tell us like where the state of technology is today, and where are those pain points for parents?
Yeah, I think first of all, if you're a parent out there today, bless you. Like, oh, it is so challenging, right? There's so many layers of parenting. And if I can give each and every one of you a hug or a virtual high five, I would. But take this as an affirmation from a complete stranger to note that you are doing a good job. But I think with respect to technology, what makes it really difficult is a few things. Really, the ubiquity of smartphones and tablets and laptops. It really has transformed the way we learn, right? It transforms the way that we communicate as families. It transforms the way our kids are engaging in school. However, I think with students, particularly with students that with ADHD, the constant barrage of those notifications, the allure to social media, and can often lead to distraction, right? We are all distracted. In fact, research suggests that the average person switches tasks every 40 seconds when they're working on a computer. But it feels like that time is being exacerbated by the struggles to focus in, to engage, and to connect in a meaningful way. So I'd say the first pain point that many families grapple with is how to focus in on any given task, how to actually get back the time, the connections that we want, and how to establish healthy media guidelines for our kids, for our families, for ourselves. And I think the other pain point that we're now seeing is what does it actually look like to reinforce our values when we're using technology? So if we are attempting to focus in on any particular task, what does it actually mean to engage in a way that ensures that we're feeling successful, right? Do we constantly have to be on our phone to communicate? So I think the biggest pain point really is about addressing distractions and getting back our time that way.
So how do we do that? How can common sense media help us with that?
I think the first, and specifically with families, that if you have a child that has ADHD, I really would encourage a number of things. One is create a distraction-free time in the focuses that you create and actively practice what that looks like, role model. So, Kate, if you're my child, I might say, Kate, over the next 3 minutes, what I want us to do is I want us to ask each other questions at dinner time, right? This is a time where we're distracted, we're focusing in on a particular area. With respect to being online, I think what's helpful and where CommonSense could come in is to provide effective tools for you to do that. I'll give you just one. There's a site called Freedom. I believe it's freedom.to, but they are a site that focuses in on blocking websites or apps temporarily to restrict distraction during that time. And again, this is
Oh,
a really simple task to do, but it's a really helpful way to set the stage and create those values, as I pointed out. And
so
then
that app turns off the child's phone like during dinner time if you wanted
that
to.
app, if I'm not mistaken, that app gives you an opportunity to set to block any apps or websites that can help potentially distract the child. So if the child
Okay.
is very engaged in a particular tool, that can actually help to block it. And
Oh, okay.
the key here is not really to start to create all these blockers in your life, but to actually hone in on and to define what exactly is that focus time for you. So if your child is writing an essay, blockers like that would help, right?
Yeah.
The second thing I think is really important that might be practical is being really intentional about what we're doing online. And I think at the very beginning, maybe middle of the day, helping your child, or even as a parent, setting at least three intentions for what you want to get done when you're online. So if you're on Netflix late at night, you might say to yourself, I'm going to watch this particular show. And then at the cue mark, maybe 5 minutes before the end of the show, I'm going to do something else. You want to transition to something else. You're setting an intention for real simple tasks or engagements that you might have online.
Instead of binge watching
Exactly.
6 or 7 shows on the Netflix.
And then
Yeah.
all
So
of
you
a
have to
sudden you
really be
realize, yeah.
thinking. Yeah. Yeah. You have to really be thinking. And I think when you have a child, it's hard. It's harder for them, especially if they have ADHD, because that frontal lobe isn't really kicking in yet. So it's hard for them to kind of think ahead and be intentional.
Yeah, and
So
as you
it's
pointed
like,
out, Kate, I think the key here is that intentionality happens when families empower their kids to begin to do that, right? So families really play a crucial role in supporting their students by, and we know this, right? We want to create a structured routine, one that actually balances screen time and physical activity and homework and so on and so forth. But we want to make sure that when the child is using tech, we can go a step further to hone in on the actual strategy on how they're going to do that. Right. So let me
yeah,
give you a quick example, which is if I am texting you back and forth with my child, again, I'm speaking to kids that have access to phones. I might say to them, I'm going to send you a text for the next, 3 minutes, but then I expect you, then we'll talk in person, right? Or, that those subtle sort of like process
yeah,
statements do wonders for kids, especially particularly with kids that exhibit that process. So,
yeah. That's a great tip. So then you're not solving all your problems via text,
exactly.
right? And you make your child and you have like a face-to-face interaction, right? To
Yeah.
solve problems and talk about things.
And one of the great things, and again, I want to put a shameless plug for CommonSense, but one of the beautiful things that they do is that they offer advice. They offer that support for families. They provide them with scripts, how to actually have these conversations for families. So we have that for free on our site. But for families that are attempting to figure out, how to talk openly about, very challenging topics, or how to talk about screen time in a way that is helpful, please go to our site. It's really beneficial. So.
Yeah, okay. And does Common Sense give scripts and talk about social media for the young teens and teens who are trying to navigate that
Yeah.
world?
Yeah, so if you're a parent, I'd listening in, I might look at the time with tech in three ways. If you're a parent of an elementary school age child, I might think about the introduction of socialization online. And what that means is if your child is playing a game like Roadblocks or they're collaborating with others online, we want to be really intentional about creating norms of engagement. How do you speak to someone? How do you speak to someone that you don't know? And
Oh
what I
yeah.
find is that parents will often start with time. John, Jane, you've been on that device for too long. You only have 5 minutes. And that's a really great start. But my invitation is to think about setting those stage. What is John or Jane gonna sound like when they are chatting with their friends online? And so Common Sense does provide that guidance and some, basic how-tos on that. And now the second part, which is like as a child then gets online or is now exposed to social media, I think the key here for families is to then do two things. One is be aware of what those apps are. Again, I'm not asking every family to join TikTok tomorrow or Be Real or wherever these latest apps
Yeah.
are. I'm simply saying, be aware of how your child is engaging in those apps. Are they passively sort of scrolling? Are they actively creating videos? And then once you identify what that is, you are more easily able to communicate what it is that you want them to be doing. How do you want them to communicate in the way that they're using it? And we
Yeah.
offer all of that at Common Sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good. And is there a way for parents to see besides just picking up their phone and seeing what they're doing?
Yeah, that I think it's a great question, Kate. And I find parents are either in two camps, the camp where they want to create blocks and restrictions and they want to hover. Hover is a very triggered word. I want to be cognizant of it, but they want to oversee through a third app what their child can and can't do. And that's a
Yeah.
great approach. Again, if you want to create sort of holistic engagements and let your child know what you're doing, that's helpful. And then there's the other camp, which is from the get-go, and you can always reset at any time, creating a plan with your family around technology use at home, right? And so establishing just a quick one pager, maybe some two or three rules where you say, here's what we believe tech to be in our household. Here's what we want to be doing. And here's what we expect each of us to communicate. We want to make sure that we're affirming others. We want to make sure that we are going to sites that are appropriate for our families. And then what we're going to be doing is every month or every week or whatever the cadence is, we're going to openly talk about these things. And that's
Yeah.
so the device becomes secondary. The device is, Kate, I'd like to see your phone now because I'd like to see that you are doing what's expected of you, right? And that's a completely different narrative that can be problematic, but also very healthy when it's part of a healthy, when those norms are established from the get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's a great plan. I
Yeah.
think the key is to stay consistent, right? As the parent, that you got to stay consistent on your check-ins and communication with that.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're like myself, I'm raising my hand nice and high. Sometimes I'm the biggest hypocrite, right? I say to my child one thing and I'm modeling something entirely different. And I just know, and I have to name that for myself, right? I'll give you a
Yeah.
quick example. The other day, I'm having dinner, and I love playing music at dinner time, and so it was an in between a track, and I went in and I changed the track real subtly, right? But my 8-year-old daughter says, "Well, Papa, you had said that there's no phones during dinner
Oh.
time, so," and I was caught, right? I'm like, "Well, but the song changed." And then I had to name it, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm very sorry. I'm going to turn the device off, and our music will be just us speaking with one another. Now, she didn't think anything of it, but if I didn't name and was honest with myself about what those norms were, and she called me out on that, then then it just wouldn't be the same, right? So you know,
Right.
the key takeaway here is just it's okay to model. It's okay to be honest with ourselves and say maybe we're not the best models for our kids, but it's also better to establish what those guidelines are and those norms are and attempt to do that collectively as a family. So,
Jamie, tell us what's coming in the world of tech. with AI. And then when I was talking to you, you said there's even more new forms of tech coming.
Oh, geez. Yeah. If I have to say that those two letters again, Kate, I think I'm going to throw up. Right. So what is going on with AI? What, from our perspective? Well, I think it's important to note that AI or artificial intelligence and other new forms of technology really present this really exciting possibilities, particularly with families or kids with ADHD. And we know, and we're seeing trends where like AI powered platforms are easily able to decipher and analyze learning patterns. There are a number of companies now that are tailoring content to individual preferences at the school level. We're also seeing neurofeedback technology, right, which is training the brain to enhance focus. Those are all showing promises of aiding students with ADHD. I think the challenge here and the thing that we want to be mindful over is a few things. One is parents. Are you equipped and have you been privy to how this technology works for yourself, for your family, for your kids? And have you communicated not only the expectations, but have you communicated what not to share on these platforms? You know, personal information, um, how to engage in these particular prompts with these platforms. And then the second is really thinking how practical tip per se, but also just like maybe to be mindful over is uh, that it's helpful to encourage our kids to explore these AI driven apps, particularly around schooling, right? So if they're having difficulty performing a certain task, explore it, figure out what that is intended to do. I mean, if it's new technology, let's figure out how to use it in a way that's helpful for
Yeah.
families. Does that make sense, Kate?
Yeah. I think I got my kids use Quizlet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got a marketing email from them with like all these different applications now inside Quizlet that's like AI powered. And they're really cool, seems like really cool applications, right? To be even more helpful, especially if your child struggles, right, in school and needs more support. It seems impossible to stay on top of. So is CommonSense Media staying on top of all of this? Like, if you were a parent and went to your website, like, can I get educated?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, we're in the process of creating that, and very shortly we'll be launching some support with a platform that we can certainly share at some point. But what you can do on our site is at this point go in and first uh, seek sites, or we have I'm happy to share it as a resource following this, but it is a parent's guide to how to navigate AI. I think the
Oh,
first thing I'd
great.
want to do as a parent is just make sure that my child is aware of what the tool is. Again, we recently had a poll that came out and it said, while kids are using AI, often without the parents or even their teachers' knowledge, right? So we
Yeah.
want to just be mindful that if our child is using it, we're using it in a way that helps them, that ensures that they are not feeling overwhelmed, that they are equipped to that. And so you can find that on our site, a parent's guide to AI that we'll post for you. And again, I'd probably just say the second thing that I would be really helpful is really to start to assess the tools to see whether or not the tools actually benefit learning in your household. So making sure that we're benefiting sort of like the technology and the challenges it actually poses for students and for kids. And I
Yeah.
think the biggest way to do that really is just to both explore it, but also to set those guidelines and norms of how to use these tools the front. And we offer that at CommonSense. We rate and review on the education side. We rate and review a number of tools, a number of them being AI tools. So
Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
So it kind of gives you a quick list. Plus, if you're trying to just even figure out what tools are available, that's why it's great because you can just go to your website and say, okay, here's what they recommend the top five are, whatever, and you can explore, start from there. It doesn't have to be this new starting from ground zero, if you will.
exactly right. And so
Right.
I've given you quite a bit, but I to your point, Kate, I might first identify as a parent the following. So if I'm listening and you're like, well, Jamie, what the heck have I like gathered from you the last 20 minutes of engaging? Here are my tips, right? The first is making sure that we are setting distraction-free times and setting intention for our kids. Website blockers do a wonderful job. You can go to our site to review what those sites are. I gave you an example with that freedom. The second is
Yeah.
making sure that, with how we empower our kids with technology use, just really being mindful of when to incorporate tech breaks and how to set guidelines up for how our kids should be communicating when they're online, being intentional about that, and regularly not only checking, but regularly having conversations when there is hiccups without any judgment, and being able to model in a way that's effective. And I think finally with AI tools, to your point, Kate, the idea that we want to try out these tools, make a list of these tools, but be able to assess whether or not they're benefiting our kids or not.
That's good. And Jamie, do you have any insight into from Common Sense's point of view about like Chat GPT? I feel like you're kind of on this line, like in parents, right? Like how do you use Chat GPT to help support you with your schoolwork versus
Yeah.
like using it to do your schoolwork? Does Common Sense Media talk about that?
Yeah. And if I'm hearing you correctly, and I think what a lot of the concerns are on the education front are the ethical concerns, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Is the student going to be using this tool to cheat on their assignment? And in what has actually happened is AI companies have begun to recognize the ethics as well and have begun to create platforms that can easily help teachers detect when when language is being AI language or AI content is being copied and pasted in a document.
Okay.
So I think the answer to your question is it's very complicated, but I might suggest the following for families. One is if at the start of the school year, if your child is considering using it, you're using it as a resource, um, go to your teacher or go to your school and ask them for their policy, their guidelines, so you can get very clear on what the do's and don'ts of using these platforms. Before we get into talking about how, we can ensure that our kids are not cheating, we want to make sure that the tool is being used effectively to begin with, and
Right.
that we're able to do that, right? So once you have those guidelines, we want to then work specifically if you're going to use ChatGPT, we want to explore all the unique ways that those platforms actually work. So, teaching your child how to do basic prompts and basic searches is really helpful. I'll give you a real quick one. Oftentimes, I recommend this for teachers, but I certainly can do this for families. On ChatGPT, what's really helpful is that you type in an action word. ChatGPT, create, design, outline. We're using some of those action verbs. You're giving it some context, right? So we want to say, imagine you are the famous Kate Brownfield, a podcaster parent. You want to give it some hypotheticals. Clearly, I wouldn't use your name on ChatGPT, but you want to give it some context, have it role play.
Okay.
And as much as you can, you want to be as specific as you can in terms of your request. What is it that you're looking for? And ensure that your child, in just in a really basic way, knows how to navigate these experiences that gets at the key here. And is once the child, once your child then gets content from ChatGPT and others, you want to skim through it. Like that's where the real work begins. We want to analyze that. We want to determine whether or not the information is false or not. And that's where we want to figure out what the child is actually doing with that information. If the child is simply copying and pasting in the document saying, Mom, I'm done, then we clearly have a problem, right?
Right.
But if the child is taking it and maybe remixing an audio file and creating its entirely different process or project, not only commend them, but also ask them to explain their process. That is really the key in all of this, right?
Yeah.
And that communication, I think, between parents and students and teachers and schools is critical in all of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you for your service. It's a great site. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been fun, Kate. I wish you a beautiful rest of your weekend, and thanks all for being alive today.